Welcome to Processing Purpose, a business and lifestyle podcast committed to having honest conversations about the stuff in our lives that is often suppressed, ignored, or overlooked. We are two brothers from very different backgrounds, but with one common goal. From entrepreneurship to relationships, from hobbies to house projects, nothing is off limits as we process becoming the best version of ourselves in business and life.
10, dude.
10. Is this 10?
Diez is Spanish for 10.
Is this, I guess, did we do 9 last week?
I hope so. I hope I'm not wrong on that, but I think it's a 9er or a 10er.
I honestly don't know. That'd be funny if this is episode 9.
That is a pretty good way to start, because that's kind of how we're feeling this morning anyway.
Yeah,
we're going with the flow.
We had zero topic today.
We're going with the flow, but I think we have some nuggets.
A general vector
to take away, no doubt.
So
what are we talking about?
I don't know. What are we talking about?
I think we're talking about a few different things, but really I think the main theme was strategy, right? Strategic thinking, strategic planning, and just different facets around that. And I think we're going to branch off and talk about some other things as well.
Yeah, I mean, when we sat down, I was like, all right, what? Because usually the day before we're like, what topic do you want to do?
Yeah.
You know, try and keep it kind of in a silo. And today when I sat down, we hadn't talked about it.
Right.
You guys have been sick. We had board meetings over the weekend. It was just full. And the question I asked was, what feels the most relevant to this moment?
Right.
Where's your headspace right now? I think our strength in people listening to this podcast is going to be just the rawness of what the entrepreneur journey looks like, the day-to-day. Like,
yeah,
how you deal with this moment, how you deal with that moment. And it's a slog. It sometimes, not all. I don't want to make it sound like it's always that way, but there's a fair bit that's a slog.
Right.
And so it was like, all right, we could talk about this, we could talk about this, we could talk about this. What's the most relevant to this moment? And you said,
for me personally, just constantly swimming in a space. And I think this is probably what I'm going to call the entrepreneur's dilemma, is always having the dialogue of, am I maximizing my talent, strengths, and time all at the same time? Meaning, or a clearer way to ask the question is, am I spending my time doing what I should be doing on a daily basis? Ooh. And not just task oriented, but I mean like thematic, right? Meaning, should I be expressing myself this way? Should I be building and growing in this way? And I'm not saying, and I think no matter what you do, if it's positive, forward moving things like exercising, reading, things like that, they're always going to push you a little bit forward. But I just mean on a strategic level. Like, am I strategizing my days to maximize who I am and what I bring to the world? And I don't know. I constantly ask that question and have that dialogue. I just don't know.
Is that a cerebral question for you, or is that a heart question?
It's funny because when you ask me that question right now, immediately I thought, oh, that's all in my head. And then immediately I felt almost this knot in my heart. And I think for me, it's probably more of a heart question.
Yeah.
Am I expressing myself the way I truly want to express myself to the world? Am I my true self on a daily basis? And I don't know. I mean, I'm constantly torn between the two conversations of do what you love and do what you're good at. And I want those two things to align, right? I think all of us do. But it seems like right now I have two different lanes that I'm constantly swimming in and having conversations about and flirting with, and these two things are pretty different. Well, I shouldn't say that. I should say one is soaked in opportunity, and one is soaked in how I want to spend my time and what I get excited about. And so anybody and everybody would probably look at me and go, "Hey, follow this then, man. Don't worry about the rest. Like you're a talented guy. You can do what you want with your time. Just put your energy towards something you really want to be doing every single day." But, you start to think about layers like your children, and their future and their well-being. And, we talked about sacrifices in a previous episode, and this is along the same lines of those conversations of, do I need to sacrifice what I actually want to do to make sure I'm doing what I should be doing for my family and making sure I put them ahead of myself? It's just a constant conversation. I'm not sure there's a perfect answer to that. I think it's up to everybody to decide. But right now, if you're asking me where am I today, what headspace am I in, what heart space am I in, it's really asking the question, am I doing what I should be doing?
What's interesting is because if we think about the few episodes that preceded this one, it's all kind of in a similar vein, which I think speaks to where our headspace is right now. It was priorities, it was purpose, it was sacrifice,
disruption,
and here we are talking about, for lack of a better term, like kind of finding that daily motivation to move forward. I don't know how you would encapsulate that into a word or a theme, but there's a sense, maybe it's the entrepreneur, like you said, maybe it's just the entrepreneur dilemma, but there's certainly a sense between you and I also of this tug and pull between that which I'm responsible to and that which I would prefer to do.
Right.
And I think I agree that it's a heart thing. There's definitely a head piece to it. There's an intellectual piece to it. I think that question for me shows up like, am I living up to my potential?
Right.
I think that's the the cerebral piece of this. In a as humble way as I can, I feel like I'm a talented person that has a lot to give, and I wonder if I'm doing the best I can.
Right.
In that, that's probably a healthy check.
Didn't I wonder if I asked you this question off recording or off air, but I heard this recently. Are you doing the best you can do, or are you doing it the best it can be done? And again, that's that same dialogue, that inner dialogue of, I don't know, some days I could define that a lot better than others. But I think consistency in entrepreneurship is what makes most entrepreneurs great, right? Yeah. Those stories of success are consistency.
I didn't quit.
Right. I just kept going and going and going. And don't get it twisted. Like, not every day is going to be harvest. Not every day is going to be execution day. There's going to be plenty of days that feel this way. And sometimes that introspection, in my opinion, can actually turn into something really grand and really great, because sometimes it's your own spirit and everything else slowing you down just enough for you to hear, see, and feel what's really going on in your world. So I'm just trying to be, I'm not in a funky space, which is really good. It's not a like I'm kicking the can and I feel like I'm wasting my time. It's not that at all. We're actually forming a firm. We're making a lot of forward motion with our real estate business that I feel really good about, really proud of. But of course, we're still always going to have, or just be challenged with the thought and notion, is this the best it can be done? Still having those dialogues for sure.
And I don't know how we unpack this. I mean, the truth of this is that I don't think either one of us are going to conclude this podcast with so here's how you go about this.
Right.
Like, this is a very real, in alignment with the title of our podcast, like processing the purpose of all of this.
Right.
Like, we're literally just going to process this.
Can I ask you a big question? This is a big rock question.
Here's the proof. Here's all my notes for today.
I got a few, but you're not going to be able to read them.
You can read all of mine.
And this is a fun game to play with anybody, but I'm going to play it with you. If you could be anyone, do anything, be anywhere, at any time, what would it be? Who would you be? What would you do? Money's not an object. You absolutely have figured everything out for your kids. You've got them dialed in, college, whatever else in their future. You got that figured out. Now it's time for you to go do what you want to do, be who you want to be. Money's not an object. What is that?
Well, there's two answers to this. The one is kind of like if you could choose to be anybody, who would you choose to be? And that would be a country music rock star.
Love that.
Yeah.
I love that. I
Yeah.
never knew that about you. That's awesome.
It's like this sweet combination of like
That's so awesome.
being on stage and having people chant your name.
Sure.
And yet country music is in a vein of just a little bit more, this is totally generalization and not always fair, but a little bit more authenticity in my view.
People that don't like country, I'm calling you out. You're not as happy. You need country in your life. Oh, I love country music. That's awesome.
So that would just be an alter ego, that or, a fighter pilot or something like that. But,
That's awesome.
Um,
Very cool.
if everything was figured out professionally, financially, and I'm living the life I had today, what would I choose to go spend my time doing?
Right.
I mean, it's going to not surprise anybody if you've listened to the previous episodes. I'd go powder ski. That's what I would do.
Yeah.
Right. And, that's maybe not the answer that's as fun in this moment, considering you're asking the question. But
isn't that what we're aiming for? Like, as an entrepreneur, are we ultimately aiming for freedom?
choice.
Yeah.
Yeah. To spend our time doing what we want to do with who we want to do it when we want to do it.
And by the way, just being an American, being in a country where we have the opportunity and the possibility to even live that lifestyle, that is the gift, by the way, right? Like we always swim in this internal conflict of, am I, like I just said or asked, am I doing what I should be doing? Like just the ability to even have that dialogue and the capability of it going in different directions, that's the gift, man.
There's an odd balance between gratitude and pursuit.
Yeah.
I have a constant nagging to achieve more, to take more ground, there's just a sense of dissatisfaction sounds bigger than it is, but there's just a sense of just there's more to be done.
Right.
And I can allow that, if I'm not careful, to steal my gratitude.
Right.
For everything. And you mentioning being here in America, I was sitting in my hot tub day before yesterday, and even the fact that I can say that, come on.
Yeah.
So I was sitting in my hot tub, and the sun was out, and it was crisp outside. It was probably 30 degrees. The mountains still have snow on them. And, I had my eyes closed. The sun's hitting, the eyelids. It's really bright. And I just had this sense of even if I accomplished nothing more, this is pretty freaking awesome.
I know. It really is.
And so it's an interesting dilemma, to come back to that word you used, of am I being the best version of myself that I can be?
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't.
Do you think a lot of people even have that conversation? Do you think people even ask themselves that question? The majority of people? Or do you think most people kind of just go on with their day, do their own thing, clock in, clock out?
I think if we wanted to stereotype society, most don't.
Yeah.
I think they live their life with busy as a badge of honor. And when you're busy, oh gosh, I'm so busy. So, everything's so full, right? How are things today? Oh, it's busy. And when you live in that space, you don't have really the opportunity to ask yourself those questions, because you're just going from one thing to the next.
And you said something there that stuck out to me. Ask those questions instead of the statement, right? Things could be better. Asking the question, could things be better? There's an interesting posture shift when you ask the question versus making the statement.
Well, I think one presumes that you have the answer.
Right.
And one presumes that, is there an answer?
Or maybe there's many. Yeah.
And so I don't know what's right or wrong. Not that that's the purpose of this conversation, but
right.
I just want I want to be able to, this is going to sound so cliche. I want to be able to look in the mirror and know that I gave this moment my best. Whether that's sitting here with a microphone in my face with hopefully people listening to us, or whether that's tucking my kids in at night and having my focus not be how quickly I can do it so that I can leave the room. Like I just want to be my best.
What's your example of being your best? Like if you were to frame, what does a super great best day look like?
Well, that's a subjective question.
Yeah.
Right? I don't even know how to answer that because
Right.
each day is going to be different and your best is going to look different.
So is it dangerous to set an expectation for something you don't actually know
It's a great
what it
question.
looks like? It's like, I better give my best every day, but I actually don't know what my best looks like.
I am guilty of setting expectations where expectations shouldn't be set. Like my mastermind group this last time around freaking called me out. They're like, you set unrealistic expectations all the time. And the challenge is if you don't live up to it, you take it personally and it's a reflection of your own self-image.
You know what Kyle said? You met Kyle.
Yeah.
Kyle said, it's so good. He said, my toxic characteristic is that I expect everybody to have common sense and I get really upset with them if they don't. And I thought that is such an amazing self-awareness heart check of like, whoa, I'm just like coming at people when they don't fit within, the square peg that I've put them in.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
And I think for me, there's, they said you set expectations either where they shouldn't be set or you set unreal expectations. I'm not sure I know how to not. Certainly there's pursuits in which expectations are appropriate.
But you grew up in a household where goals were priorities, right?
Yeah.
That you were to hit your numbers, get after it, no excuses.
I was very conditioned.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Your parents are they're still doing the same thing.
Yeah.
Right? Which is amazing. And they're living the same expectations you are.
Well, and I think the counter to that is if you don't set expectations, what's moving you forward? Like what are you aiming at?
Right.
Right? So I don't know how those two things come together.
There's
like,
no right or wrong. There really isn't in this regard. It's only if and when those expectations start to become a real negative for you, right? Like you're beating yourself up so bad because you weren't hitting this large expectation you kept setting for yourself. Well, then that's not healthy, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we got to have healthy expectations, but you're right. Like we always have to raise the ceiling.
Yeah.
As an entrepreneur, as a doer, that's who we are wired to be. We're wired to always be thinking about the next thing. And the rest of society, I shouldn't say the rest, but the majority of society is not wired to think that way. So call it a curse or a blessing, call it what you will, but it's just part of our DNA.
Let's zoom out here for a second and realign back to the original question. And this isn't the actual question because, like I said, I have no notes. But it was, along the line of, am I pursuing the things I should be? Am I being the best version of myself? Right. That question, that head, that heart. How does that show up for you? Like, what is that even? Is that a feeling that you get that causes you to look inward and ask those questions? Is it a dissatisfaction with what you're doing? Like, how does that show up where you find yourself in a space where you're asking yourself those questions?
Yeah, great question. I think it stems from fear, for sure. Meaning fear that I've crossed a certain level of what I perceive as successful in that field, and it makes me kind of go, all right, I'm done. Right? Like it's like going. This is kind of a funny analogy. Jim Gaffigan actually said this in one of his stand-ups, but he's like, I go to the gym and there's all these super ripped people, and I look at them and I go, you're done. What are you still doing here? Like, it should just be a bunch of fatties in here, not a bunch of you guys. Get out of here. Same idea, kind of in a way. You're kind of like, And by all means, have I reached a level of success? Many have, not even close, but
It's relative, right?
Yeah, it's relative. And so for me, I think I kind of hit a point in my tenure where I just go, all right, like I did it. Like I proved to myself I could do it. I did it. And now I'm ready to move on and try something new, try something different. For me, I think there's also a lot of excitement in starting fresh. Yeah. There's something about starting anew, starting fresh, starting over that I get into the weeds and I get excited about, right? Like, we've talked about it quite a bit, but just learning about how YouTube works and getting into the weeds there and learning about video production and I love that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But the moment I span out and realize it's working, then I'm like, all right, it worked. Move on to the next thing. So it's almost childlike in a way. I don't know how else to say it. It's almost kind of like I played with my nice, cool birthday toy, and now I'm ready to move on to the next one. So I don't know. I don't know how to frame it besides that. Yeah, a little bit of fear in that. And the reason I say fear is because I don't want to not be successful at that, right? I've been successful at this. So if I keep going, there's a chance that I'll maybe one day not be successful at this.
Oh, interesting.
So it's almost like the John Elway effect, right? Win my Super Bowl and get out.
Yeah.
And move on to the next thing.
Yeah.
So I don't know, icing on the cake kind of a thing.
I think for me, it's boredom.
Sure. I could understand that.
I think for me, it's like, can I really give this my best if I'm bored?
Right.
Right? If I'm going through the motions. And I think that there's moments in all of our careers, probably regardless of the pursuit. Maybe this isn't fair because I haven't found the thing, but that you have seasons of just like going through the motions. So it's probably not fair to, to use that as your indicator.
Right.
But I feel like that's how it shows up for me is, what am I going to do today? I don't want to do this. And then it transitions to, should I be doing this?
Sure.
If that's really how I'm feeling, like,
totally.
Is this the best use of my energy? Is this really all there is? Should I be doing something different? And then it gets very cerebral.
Right.
I don't know.
And then on top of that, it's like, what if you were to cut it off? I think about it in terms of like the tomorrow effect, I call it, right? If I were to cut this off today and tomorrow's a new day, new direction, new everything, how do I actually feel about this thing now? Right? Am I starting to go, oh no, I didn't
grass is
necessarily
greener type thing?
Yeah, I didn't necessarily want to cut it off either. Yeah. I don't know if I've shared this on this podcast, but I want to share it here because I love it. Old pastor said, the grass is always greener until you see the water bill. I just love that definition. It's so true.
Yeah.
Till you feel, or till you realize how much it's going to cost you to have those same things.
Yeah.
It's usually not as sweet as you think. Yeah, I appreciate that. Boredom kind of punches you in the face and makes you realize, I don't know, is this what I should be doing with my day? Here's another thing too, is I've been thinking about recently, and I know you're going to laugh at me, but I just want to do things that are cool. I knew you were going to chuckle out of that. But I mean that. Like, I want to like look back at my legacy and go, dude, you just did a bunch of cool
You did all that
stuff. Yeah, like
have my grandkids, my great grandkids being like, do you know all this stuff that my granddad did?
Yeah, like don't get me wrong, we do that in our our personal lives, right? We go out and go on cool trips and expeditions and things. But nevertheless, like my day to day, I want to be known as someone that had a cool identity and legacy and something fun and exciting and memorable. Like real estate, don't get me wrong, like there's a lot of opportunity in that. And maybe some out there look up to real estate and go, man, I would love to own a real estate company. By all means, I'm not saying what we've accomplished is pointless or worthless. It doesn't have that cool factor. You know what I mean? Like if my grandkids look back and was like, man, my grandfather owned a really cool boutique real estate company, there's just not a lot of sexiness to that. There's just not. And I don't know why it's important to me, but it feels important to me.
Yeah.
To go off. Honestly, Luke, it's because I feel like I can. Like I have the ability to go build something fun and cool. Like what am I what am I doing then? Like, if that's really what I want out of life, and I know that's a funny why, like...
No, that actually resonates a lot.
Yeah.
Like, someone asked me the other day, I don't know, I think it was probably Charlie, and we were talking about, Charlie's my head coach, and something came up, I don't remember the context of it, but there was some reference to me being president of the United States. And...
let's unpack that.
And it was like, yeah, I could do that because I know I could. Like,
right
now, I have zero interest in being president of the United States. I have a 1% interest in being president of the United States.
10%. It just keeps going up and up and up. Please vote for me.
I'm officially announcing my 2024 campaign. No. But there was a sense in that question, the reason why that pinged me is there a sense in that question there of, I know that I'm capable of doing, probably within, there's got to be some sort of limits, but I'm capable of doing just about anything I set my mind to.
Yeah.
That being true, am I setting my mind to the right things?
Right.
Right? And it's because I know I can that I ask myself the question, should I? That's interesting that you bring that up because that's in there.
Well, I've heard someone state recently, just because you can doesn't mean you should.
Right.
So again, that's the constant dialogue. So again, these are all subjective questions and conversations every person's going to have with themselves. By all means, there's no right or wrong answer to any of this. But I'd say there's something to it. I'd say explore it, right? If you're constantly having these conversations, there's something to that, and continue to dig into it. I'm still kind of sorting it out. I don't know if you guys have taken the Myers-Briggs stuff at all, but I'm a campaigner to a T. So my big personality trait that stuck out to me on that, in those results, was that I get really excited about an idea, and I can easily pull people into that excitement, but then it doesn't take long for me to lose that excitement over that idea or that thing. And you've seen that happen time and time again. But that's actually tried and true to a campaigner, to that personality type. So anyways, I'm constantly having these conversations because of that. But question to you is, well, then what?
Yeah.
Like, once you have these conversations, it's one thing to have them. It's another thing to do something about it. So what's holding me back from taking a step in any other direction is fear, right? Fear of failure, like anybody else, like getting it out there, getting my idea out there, and finding out that the rest of the world doesn't really care about it, right? That would suck. Fear that my wife would look down on it. That's a big one. That, oh man, I don't want you doing that, right? You were in this lane making money. What are you doing that for? Yeah. And so there's some of that. So those things can hold us back from making that step forward. But I'd say, I'm just going to kind of unpack my own stuff a little bit, but I've yet to really sit down and have a heart-to-heart conversation with my wife about that, right? So here I am building up fears based on assumptions, when the truth is she could very well support me in that, right? Pleasantly so. I could find out, like, whoa, you're really supportive of this for whatever reason. And I think right now is a good time to have these conversations, not because you're on the same trajectory, but because, to Luke's point a few episodes ago, we are all redefining what we're saying yes to. Everyone is, in a big way. And so I think it's appropriate to have this dialogue with your friends, with your peers, with your coaches, with your spouse. Like, open the dialogue. This is how I'm feeling. This is where my heart's at. Am I crazy for thinking this way? Am I not crazy? Why? Like, I'm going to speak for myself. I need to start having those conversations for sure.
I think sometimes the point is not to answer the question, but to ask it.
Yeah. Right.
I think especially with this topic that's a bit ambiguous. Like, I don't even know what you could call this topic. I don't know what we're going to call this episode.
Ambiguity. Just kidding. No.
Right? I think at times the point is just to ask yourself a check that, am I doing my best? I think sometimes the point's just to ask the question.
Honestly, the topic of this entire discussion is entrepreneur's dilemma. I mean, that's really where we're at.
Yeah.
We're constantly in the back and forth of wondering whether or not our lives align with true north, with our heart.
You think that that's all entrepreneurs?
Yes. I was going to say no, but then I thought, yeah, I think it is. I think there are the few out there that are crystal clear on the path they want for their life and have no variations from it, stick to it. But yeah, I think so. I guess I was going to finish with, I think most of those are nonprofits.
Oh, that have a lane that they're pursuing and feel confident about it.
Yeah, like I don't, and I wonder too if that has to do with less monetary award, right? Like I can stay in this lane knowing that what I'm going to make the rest of my life, and I'm good with it, and I'm going to keep on keeping on because that's not necessarily what's motivating me. The bigger why is the impact you're making, and people that are fueled by impact, I think, stay in that lane a lot longer. There's a lot of business people like us that convince ourselves that we're making really positive impact. We're making sales. We're making sales and creating opportunity for ourselves. I mean, that's really what it's about. The nonprofit lane, I think, just holds a lot more weight when it comes to the big why.
Without selling ourselves short, yes, we're making profit for ourselves, but we are making an impact. 100%. I mean, you're helping, maybe that couple find their first home, and it means a lot to them. So whether or not you view the impact is there.
Yeah.
That's a very generic, general example, but I think you could put that in many different directions. Cascade Conversion is making an impact. Is it making the biggest impact it can? Is it making the impact that I want to make as a legacy? Like, I think those are different questions.
Right.
But it is making an impact. But it comes back to the original question, and that is it making enough impact?
Right.
So, I wonder then if the purpose of this episode, of this processing of this question, is just to tell everybody that they're not alone.
And there's a lot of strength in that, strength in numbers, right? In my opinion, just knowing there's a lot of other people out there that are constantly wondering the same things. I mean, you're not alone in that. Keep on keeping on, right? Don't take your foot off the gas, but just know that these are normal conversations to be having with yourself. I would say, if I were to give any advice, talk those things out. Don't harbor those things, because eventually you'll start to create interesting expectations for yourself, for people around you who have no idea what you're even thinking about, right? Make sure that people are aware of your heart.
Do you think this is a question that comes up more commonly when your business, which I think I can speak to both of us at this point, becomes a little bit more mature and kind of, it's not autopilot, but it's more managerial than it is explorational and expansion and growth and leaning in? Like, I don't know about you, but in those seasons where I'm growing, I get very myopic.
Right.
I'm like dialed in. Like, these questions don't even come up. There's not even space to come up.
Right.
When I'm grinding in a specific direction, enthusiastically pursuing something. Then once I check that box, or things shift, or the market changes, or things slow down, or you reach a level of maturity, not necessarily self, but your business, and you have the space now to ask those questions. Okay, I'm going to go in a totally different direction than I thought I was going, because this just popped into my head. Is asking these questions an indicator that you're not being busy enough?
Maybe in a down spin of a cycle.
Yeah, like you're not being aggressive enough. You're not keeping yourself in the game. You're not keeping yourself busy. And when you do that, your mind wanders and you start to question.
First and foremost, yeah, I'd agree with that. Yeah, I think that's the truth for all of us. But I do wonder if this is cyclical for a reason, if this is a normal part of
a recurring theme.
Or not even just a recurring theme, but just a part of business. Like all businesses go through cycles of growth, whitewater, excitement and all that. And then it goes through a downward spiral and it starts to kind of refine itself, right? I would call this a refinement period, right? We're refining ourselves. We're trying to redesign our businesses to make sense for the lifestyles we're in. And after that, but I think before you start to turn the corner and come back up and start to feel a little bit more growth cycle again, you really ask yourself the question, I know how much work, energy, and time I'm going to put into this part.
Yeah.
I know that. So am I good with this lane right now? Because this lane has to keep me going through this, and it's going to be hard, and it's going to be turbulent and conflicting in a lot of ways. So I think that's where the dialogue for me happens is it worth it? Is it worth it to keep going in this direction anymore? And not to say the monetary opportunity may or may not be there depending on the industry you're in, but really just the season of life you're in. Is it worth it anymore? Is it worth it to put that amount of energy, stress, time, energy into what you're currently doing or not? And I think season to season, that may change. Year to year even. I even thought about it. I was like, I really thought about, we live in Leavenworth, Washington, and I was like, I've been here for a decade. And I've seen so many people come and go from this town in a decade. And I'm like, whoa, that is actually a longer span of time. And I really kind of had this moment of clarity in a way of like, okay, like we are swimming in a world of choice. Right. And we choose every single day. I think we talked about it the other day, micro choices, right? Like micro choices make the difference. And I think can help us through some of these cycles, just those little itty bitty choices. I know I'm rabbit trailing a little bit, but
no, go.
But I think micro choices matter. I think, at the end of the day, it's every single decision we make throughout the day that really defines whether or not we gave it our best throughout the day. If we were really honest with ourselves, we'd look at all those micro choices, right? Look, and I know this is a funny example, but for breakfast, looking at the donut or looking at the banana, right? And making the choice to grab the banana and eat the banana instead of the donut, right? We make these tiny little decisions all day long. And so I actually asked, I was at Seattle's Union Gospel Mission at the time, and I asked my old counselor why some people make it and some people don't. And that's what he said. He said micro choices. Those tiny little choices to get up every day and do the right thing over and over and over again. That's very challenging to do, believe it or not.
It's a fantastic book. If you haven't read it, you should grab it. It's called The Slight Edge.
Ooh.
So good. And it talks about the little, seemingly insignificant choices that you make every single day. I mean, that's why right here on my desk is what story will today's decisions tell?
Totally.
Right? It's the micro choices. The life that you're living today is a reflection on the choices that you made a decade ago, last year.
True.
Yesterday.
True.
So if that's true, and I think that intellectually we can land on a space of going, yeah, that's probably fair.
Yep.
Now, maybe there's some outside circumstances to people listening that affected their trajectory, and that happens. And that's tough, and we just have to figure out how to do lemonade from lemons sometimes. I recognize that. But I think for the vast majority of us, our decisions, the choices that we make, determine the life that we live. And if that's true, are we making the right choices? Are we choosing now? And this is a gut check for me for the life that we want in another decade.
That did something for me, saying that. Yeah, that's interesting. Now, there's going to be a number of people listening that are like, whoa, these guys have built businesses and they're still in this headspace. Like, I don't even know where to start. Like, how do I even start with an idea, let alone be in a, have.
Well, go back to episode 1.
Yeah, absolutely go back to episode 1. But also, I don't know why this popped up, but I'd say just start by learning who you are, right? Take as many assessments, personality assessments you can. Luke and I have talked about it in previous episodes, but we really feel that it helps us take a step forward in learning who we are and how we operate. I'd say start there and hope that through that process, you learn a little bit more about yourself and what's important to you, to then formulate your values in your life and then find that big why within your values. But anyways, that's just a tidbit of advice, because if I'm somebody that's early on in my entrepreneurship trajectory, I'm thinking, I don't even know where to start with this.
I just had another thing that flashed. I don't know the right word. Is it arrogant of us to even draw the conclusion that everybody has the opportunity to ask themselves this question? In other words, is it a luxury to even be able to ask yourself this question and pivot? Or does everybody, regardless of profession, career, job, situation, get to choose their trajectory?
Only because I lived in a pretty dark season, and I lived in a season where I didn't have a lot of. I had choice. Don't get me wrong. I could have walked out of that living situation any day, but I was in a situation where I had to slow down, and I didn't have a lot, and I didn't have an education at the time. I didn't have any money. I didn't have any career. I had nothing really to fall back on. And I'm going to use this example, which hopefully is relevant. But I remember, actually, this kind of isn't relevant. But anyway,
we went down the path. Keep it going.
I'll shorten it up. But a guy really helped me sit down and figure out a really simple savings plan when I was there to start putting money away so that I could have choices going forward. So I guess it is relevant. In that I'd say I had to start with $1 a week. $1 a week to finally put myself a year later, right? You talked about the 10-year trajectory, a year later to finally start making choices that I was excited to make so that I can push the ball forward a little bit more. It took me a full year to get there. And what it was I saved $1 one week. The second week I saved $2. The third week I saved $3. Fourth week $4, and so on and so forth. Believe it or not, at the end of the 52-week period, I ended up with something like $1,400. Right?
I love that.
When you go week after week, it doesn't seem like that big of a deal. But then at the end of it, you're like, oh my gosh, I got a chunk of change. And when you're living at the Mission, $1,400 is a lot of money. That's a lot of money. And so, anyway, does everybody have the privilege to have this conversation now? My answer is yes.
Yeah. It's going to look different, though.
Yeah.
That's got to be the qualifier.
Yeah,
right? We might be asking right now for where we're at in life, like, am I giving the best of my energies to the pursuits I'm pursuing?
Right.
But the same question can be asked when you're in the Mission. It just looks different, right?
Right.
It's honestly, I think it comes back to what you were just talking about on micro choices.
Yeah.
It's what do I need to do today so that tomorrow is a little bit better?
Right.
Maybe not the best that I ultimately have the vision for my life, but being in the Mission might be an extreme example for people. Other people might be at what would be considered maybe a dead-end job that they hate, but that takes way more time than they'd want to. And they're like, I don't even know where to, I don't know what to do with my hands, right? Like
yeah.
Ricky Bobby. But there is, I promise you, a micro decision that can be made that may seem insignificant in the grand scheme, but tomorrow is a little bit better because you made that decision.
Right.
And so in that capacity, when I asked the question, it was true. I was kind of going, is this a luxury? But as you answered, I went, maybe the question specifically that we're asking is a luxury, but the question in general is not.
No, but only if I'd say only if it is succeeded by action, right? You can have these conversations, but you have to do something about it, right? It's one thing just to sit here and swim in possibilities, but to do something about it once you've decided this is what I want to do, that makes all the difference. Good example of that is I remember when I first started in real estate, I had a bunch of door hangers, and I honestly I had this epiphany of, look, at the end of the day, if you're going to get started in this business, at the very least, all of your neighbors and your friends and sphere should know you're in real estate, right? It kind of had this sinking feeling. If the guy 2 doors down lists his house with somebody else and I'm right here, his neighbor, I have failed. Like, he needs to know that I'm at least, if he chooses otherwise, that's whatever, but he at least needs to have the choice and know that I'm in real estate. So I went and hung hangers all around. And I'm reminded of this because I saw it on my Facebook. But it was a picture of me standing in front of my first listing I ever had. I had a button-down shirt and some Vans and some shorts on, looking like a semi-pro. But nevertheless, like, at that very moment in time, I had no idea that listing was going to, 10 years later, have me now forming a firm. I have team members, staff, my wife's on my team with me.
Yeah.
And we're making waves. And like, I would have never have known in that very moment that effort to hang those door hangers was 10 years later going to put me in a position to provide for my family. That's the story that we're talking about here.
Yeah. You can't know.
No.
You can't know. You just have to make the decision in faith, knowing that this is the best decision I can for today.
Right.
And maybe to bring it full circle as we're 45 minutes in, that, you know, you asked a question. I don't remember exactly what it was, but, you know, something along the lines of like, how can you get to the end of the day and make sure that that you're satisfied with the decisions that you made, or something like that earlier.
Right.
Maybe that's it. Maybe it's just, I did the best today that I could with the information that I had. And the truth is, we don't have all the information. We don't know where this is going. You don't know where this new firm is and the expansion into new territories are going to go. It's what's in front of you. It's the best decision that you have with the information that's in front of you. And until you have new data, new information that informs you otherwise,
right,
you're giving it the best you can to pursue what's in front of you. And I think if you can get to the end of your day and go, yep, I did the best I could with the information that I had today.
Yeah.
I think that's the best you can ask for.
Well, I mean, when they say trust the process or fall in love with the journey, all that's saying is trust yourself and learn to love uncertainty. That's what it's saying. Trust yourself, fall in love with uncertainty. If we learn to do that on a daily basis,
we hate uncertainty, meaning the royal we of society.
I know. Oh, of course. It's what keeps us up at night, right? It's what keeps us up at night. But somehow, some way, over millennia, we've figured out a way to continue on through all of that. I mean, we're talking about cataclysms, world wars, like major disruptions in society. And somehow, some way, the human spirit keeps adapting, stays alive. And you will too.
Yeah.
You are that. You are a product of that.
So know that you're not alone.
Yeah.
Like this nagging, the internal questioning, the what do I do next? Maybe it never goes away, but the point is, you're not wrong.
No.
Right? There's nothing wrong with asking those questions. There's nothing wrong with the doubt.
I actually would argue it's in our blood. If you go all the way back to, let's say, Mesopotamia, let's use that as the cradle of civilization. When our ancestors from Mesopotamia decided to go out and decide to explore, those are all of our ancestors.
Right.
All of our ancestors were connected to those people that left Mesopotamia and decided to go out into the world and conquer the world. They're explorers. That's who you are internally. You come from that DNA. So keep exploring. Keep falling in love with the journey. It's all uncertain. But trust yourself. Trust the process. You have what it takes. And, I've said it a lot, but check in with your basic needs, right? Your basic needs are met. You have the opportunity to even ask the question in the first place. You're in good shape. You're in really good shape.
I don't know what else we add.
Yeah, I think that's it. That's a wrap.
That's really good.
Yeah.
It's a good conversation that we had no direction on.
Yeah.
And I'm not even sure we came out with resolution. Not that that was the point.
No.
But I hope it was helpful in some way. I feel like it was helpful for me.
Yeah. A little bit of philosophy sprinkled in there. I mean, it's just good to take at least an hour a month, if not 10 minutes a week, or 10 minutes every day, maybe even, just to reflect on your life from a bird's eye view.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's really healthy. And I think it's a part of it, actually. It is.
Reminds me, I'll end with this. It reminds me of a story of, and I'm not going to do it justice. This is the abridged version, but what do you do with your dash? And when you die, you'll have a headstone, and it will say you were born on this day and you died on this day. And in between those days is a dash.
Mm-hmm.
And we get to choose what we do with that dash.
100%.
So choose wisely.
I love it. As a old greeting card said that I love, it said, time is short, waste it wisely.
Hey. And on that note, we love you. Thank you for listening.
Totally.
Thanks for the conversation, brother.
Likewise. Thank you all.
Bye.
We out. Thank you for tuning in to Processing Purpose. We hope you grabbed a few gold nuggets to take one step forward in your journey of life and business. Please remember to like and subscribe our channel if you'd like to get more content to help you build and grow everything around you. Make today your best day. Today is day one.